Hey, Karl.
Hello. How's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. You?
Yeah, not too bad. Although I did just sit down in my seat about 2 minutes ago. It's last day of school here for my kids in Northern Ireland, so it's now
Oh, nice.
officially the summer holidays, and
Woo!
they were in
Party
they
time.
were in school for about 2 hours. So yeah,
Oh,
it's
wow.
all
What's
it's
the
all
point in
it's
even
all good.
going 2 hours? Jesus.
So now it's the summer holidays. We might have children visit future episodes of Cloud Native Weekly. We'll see how it goes. How's your
My
week been,
cats,
mate?
your children. Hey, it'll make a good show.
Yeah.
Yeah, week's been good so far. What is it? Thursday today. Doing a bit of EKS work, a bit of giving back to community. So the Kida.sh, I've been updating some of the docs, putting in some banners to alert you when you're looking at old documentation, stuff like that.
Awesome.
So been quite a fun week. How about you?
Yeah, it's been a busy week. There's been a lot happening outside of work with the run up to the kids finishing school and all of that. Inside of work, um, writing up some target architectures for a customer on Exchange and Microsoft 365. So not cloud native goodness, but it's still the cloud. It's still good fun to give customers
Exchange.
direction and encouragement. So it's all good. Also, still in my spare time, developing that AKS playground idea that I've been working on. So
Yeah, nice.
sounds like the customer I'm working with is also wanting to explore containerization as well. So we're
Even
we're
better.
doing some write ups about ARO, so Azure,
Oof.
Red Hat OpenShift, and then versus AKS. So let's face it, our preference is probably AKS, but
100%.
to
Pure
each
Kubernetes.
their own. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's been my week. Busy, lots of different things to be doing this week. So yeah. And it
Nice.
was actually, and I almost forgot, she doesn't watch this show, so she won't be angry at me. It was also my eldest daughter's 20th birthday. I know I look
Oh, wow.
much too
Yeah.
young to have a
Yeah,
20-year-old.
much too young, mate. Tall.
But she was 20 this past week, so yeah, it makes me
And
feel
you're
really
nearly
old.
40, aren't you, soon?
Not nearly at all.
Very close.
There's an entire month to go until I'm
What's
40.
a month and a
An, ent-
day?
an entire month, so let's not
Yeah,
start with the nearly. So
very
yeah,
close.
I mean, aside from your EKS, how do you find EKS versus AKS? So EKS, for anybody that isn't aware, is AWS's version of managed Kubernetes, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly.
how
Um, I find AKS a lot easier. It's just easier to keep things up to date, manage it as well. It's closer to pure Linux, pure Kubernetes, in my opinion. Yeah, EKS is very. It's like the Linux of Kubernetes offerings from a managed cloud. You can do so many different things with it, whereas AKS you can do a lot once you've got it up and running. But they've made it so nice to get it up and running, super easy to keep it up to date, super easy, which is nice. And I like to be doing things with least admin effort. That's been my life's motto, and I like to stick to that way.
Awesome. So let's jump into some news. As always, we try to keep the show quick and snappy so that you can watch us or listen to us over a tea break or over a quick lunch break. So let's just jump into the news.
1 second before we go in with it. Nearly forgot about them.
Yeah, still love those transitions, so it's very cool. We are nerds, but that's okay.
Yes.
So
Definitely.
a big piece of news in the people area of the cloud native space and cloud native industry this last week or so is the amazing Kelsey Hightower retiring.
Yeah.
So check out that Twitter thread there for news that after, was it 25 years plus in the industry, Kelsey Hightower is moving on to retirement.
Which is cool.
Such a big player. Yeah, such a big player in the cloud native industry, and not just for Google. And it's he tweeted earlier about different companies, same team, and that's what the cloud in general, but the cloud native space in particular feels like. We all work for different companies. Like Richard and I obviously work for different companies these days, and we're all driving cloud native. We're on the same team driving that forward. So what do you make of Kelsey Hightower retiring, Richard?
A bit jealous. I wish I could. But yeah, no, it's it will leave a big hole in the cloud native community. Hopefully, he'll still sort of be around. Just drop off the face of the earth. But yeah, I'm jealous, basically.
Yeah, I am a little jealous myself. I am more than a few years away from proper retirement age, but hey, it would be nice to retire a bit early and spend some time with the family. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes and how the bank balance survives over the next few years. But yeah, that big news in the industry this week, Kelsey Hightower retiring. So check out that tweet thread, send him your well wishes. Next up, then, we talked last week or the week before, or maybe both, about Kube's proposal to become a graduated CNCF project. So check out that link to the CNCF pull request. We're at about 36% of the required votes. So they're like binding votes. So members or staff of CNCF that need to vote for this to become a graduated project. So just jump in and add your support, because they pay attention to the community support on things like this as well. Even though our votes and our thumbs up effectively isn't binding, but they like to pay attention to what the community wants, and Kube is very, very popular in the community. So do yourselves and Kube a favor, jump in and give that a thumbs up if you can. Next up, Richard, do you want to talk about the latest release of Kube?
Yeah. So they've, I think it was literally just the same day we did the last show. So last Thursday they did release a whole new version of it, which is it got a lot of bug fixes in it, and definitely worth going to check out. So make sure it's compatible with your version of Kubernetes and get updated.
Definitely. Just scanning through the release notes here, they have a new Solar scaler. They have the ability to pause auto scaling of scaled jobs. They've improved and extended the Prometheus metrics, and they've given the ability to scale to 0 if there are multiple scalers with CPU and memory scalers. So again,
that's quite cool.
We talked last week about Kube being a linchpin in the drive for sustainable cloud operating and sustainable compute. So that helps us there as well. And then in general, lots of improvements around the scalers and the core product there as well. I won't read line for line the release notes, but I just thought I'd pull out some of the highlights there.
Yeah.
So then another topic and another area close to my heart is networking. So networking cloud native is my happy place, So what Microsoft have done recently is they've released a public preview for a network observability add-on for AKS. So check out that link. But basically, it gives you more visibility into the networking metrics and performance and that of your Kubernetes cluster and your workloads. It gives you access to node level networking metrics, packet drops, connection stats.
And it's all nicely presented in a nice workbook inside Azure as well, so you can just go in and have a look at it. And I think you can even connect it up to Grafana if you need to, because it's collecting all those metrics, which is really nice.
It supports both types of Azure CNI, so the older one and the powered by Cilium Azure CNI supports Linux and Windows node types as well, which is awesome. And it as you said, it is it integrates with managed Prometheus and managed Grafana, which is very, very nice. So have a look at that link. It gives you links to deploy it and what the documentation is. And there's also a YouTube link on there as well. So you can go and have a quick watch of the network observability add-on in action. Any other news I haven't thought about or haven't included?
No, you've pretty much got the ones that I can remember seeing this week. So I think maybe we can move on to the 10-minute tech section. So let me just do the nice cool transition. And look at that. We have a screen straight away. Hides all the fumbling around all the buttons.
So pay no attention to the Oh My Posh theme that I've stolen on certain Mr.
It's
Hooper.
Such a nice theme. I really like it. The yellow is perfect.
I keep meaning to change it more to Irish techie colors, but no, the yellow and blue is fine for me at the minute. So this week we're looking at Kubescape. So Kubescape is an open source security platform that can scan and tell you about your security posture for your development environment, your CI/CD pipelines, and even your Kubernetes clusters. So it does things like risk analysis, security and compliance, and misconfiguration scanning. And the whole goal here for Kubescape is to let you focus on what's important and to save you time. So if we have a look at Kubescape itself here, underneath it's an open source project, so it's free to use Kubescape locally, and it does all of the scanning and all of the good stuff right out of the box. It does things like MITRE scanning and NSA frameworks. It scans against those and tells you what your issues are. There's even CIS benchmarks in preview for the likes of AKS and EKS if you have a look around the portal, the Armo portal as well. And as I say, it's a CNCF sandbox project. So Richard, while I'm running a few commands here, do you want to tell us about what a sandbox project is as far as CNCF is concerned?
Yeah, so now you put me on the spot. I need to remember. But the sandbox project is like the first level that you go into the CNCF. So you donate the product to the CNCF, and then you help. They like have some governance on it to make sure it's all doing the best. And yeah, you start in at that. So you're innovators and techies, and then you go to the next level, which is incubating, and then after that you go to the graduating, which is where Keith is trying to get to. So yeah. I think it was earlier this year that they donated it just before KubeCon to the CNCF. So it's really good to see more security vendors like that going in and being part of this big community.
So we'll have a look at Kubescape underpins the Armo platform, which we'll have a look at in a few minutes. But first, I wanted to have a look at Kubescape, the open source tool itself. Okay, so as you can see here, I'm sitting in my Penguin Linux WSL2 in the Windows terminal yesterday, nice, but because there's that was your recommendation back in the day. So because we only have 10 minutes here, there was no point me staring at a cluster deploying. So I deployed a cluster last night, and we'll just have a look. You can see it's a very, very basic cluster, with just the absolute minimum deployment, single node pool, and all of that. So we're going to download, we're going to install Kubescape, and we're going to point it at our cluster, and we'll see what happens. So Kubescape prides itself on being a very, very quick installation. So they say 3 minutes from getting the Armo platform version, the cluster-based version, installed and operating. So let's see if they're correct. So they have a script to install the local version, which I'm going to run here. We just pull it directly from their GitHub repo, and we're going to run it. So fair warning, I've had a look at the script, don't just download or run scripts on your machine or on your cluster without knowing exactly what they do, because that's the way to compromise and the way to danger. So this version just installs it locally, and then you put it in your path. It's important to know that isn't updatable. Okay, you have to just download the most recent version again. But if you look at the documentation for Kubescape, there is installing Kubescape link, which gives you details on how to install it from repos or from apt if you're running on a Debian-based system, and then that'll get the updates from the repositories as well. Okay, nice. So let's just run our command here. As you can see, nice little screen out there installing Kubescape, finished installation. So that's really, really quick. And one important thing to remember is put Kubescape executable in your path, or when you call Kubescape, nothing's going to happen. Okay, so I've done that. What we're going to do first, quickly, is we're going to run a quick scan. So there are a couple of options for the scan, but we're just going to do a host scan. We're not going to do verbose immediately. We're just going to get a picture of what the vulnerabilities perhaps and what the issues might be, the security posture of our cluster. Okay, so let's see how that goes. So I'll just run through it, talking to you all the time, keeping you up to date with what it's up to. We'll just let it complete.
So it's now putting the pods in the cluster for you, I'm guessing, when it says installing host scanner, or was it downloading something?
So that's downloading that locally in this case. Okay. And then it's downloading the frameworks and such as well. So you can see with my screen being a bit smaller, it isn't the nicest way it's displayed, but let me make that a bit smaller. Is that still readable, Richard? Okay.
Yeah, just about.
Okay. So this is a summary then. The controls of 65 controls, 30 have failed, 24 have passed, and then 11 have action required. So I expect that those action required are actually failures as well. Because if they weren't, then you wouldn't have to do anything, right? So you can see that it's given a nice summary along with the severity. Forbidden container registries, resource limits. Anything you want to call out in this list that you can see, Richard?
Listing Kubernetes secrets. RBAC is enabled.
So this was a pretty much next. I agree cluster.
Yeah.
So
out of the box, it's not as secure as you would think it is.
Allow privilege escalation, core DNS poisoning. So there's plenty that a security team can go and look at here to improve things as well. So you might be thinking, well, if I'm using this tool locally, it's all very well them telling me that I have forbidden container registries or that I have issues with ingress and egress or privilege escalation. But what do I do about them? Do you have to go and Google that phrase and see what happens? Well, no. What you can do is you can run the verbose version of this command, and we'll just let it run again, and it gives us an awful lot more information in addition to that summary table. So we'll just let it complete again. So Richard, you used this quite early in its existence.
Yep.
What were your impressions then, and what are your impressions now based on what Kubescape and Armo were up to?
So back in them days, it was very basic cluster scanning and stuff, and it's improved so much since there. It's got all the CIS benchmarks for AKS, EKS. The UI, which you're going to show later, has really improved a lot since then as well. And it's nice that someone else is taking all the heavy lifting of searching out what to do to fix the issues and away from us. So again, least admin effort. It's definitely a good tool to run.
So you can see at the bottom, based on the frameworks, compliance is about 72%. That's against everything. Against the NSA one, it's 74, and against MITRE, it's a bit higher at 83. So, nice. And if we scroll up the output of the verbose, what you'll see is, in addition to our table that summarizes everything, we have specific for, let's take it, this AKS support pod and what API it's using, and then the specific vulnerabilities and security posture issues related to that exact deployment, to that exact service, or that exact pod.
That's actually a user on the cluster by the looks of it. It's the kinds of user. So that's telling you that that user, AKS support, has all these extra privileges, and you might want to try and get rid of them if you can. You might not be able to, though, because it's an AKS cluster and it might be a needed user.
And you can see we've got users, then we've got service accounts that it's doing the same thing on. It basically takes the resource type one at a time and gives you a list of all of your severity, your control issues, and then gives you actually what's really interesting about the verbose version is that it gives you the link to the docs, that just like the portal will do, that I'll show you in a couple of minutes. But it gives you the link to the docs so you can go and read about it, and also it'll tell you how to fix it or what your remediation might be. So let's just have a again. So I'm not going to make my screen the text here any smaller, but you need a bit of a bigger screen because these tables trying to roll over or overlap.
Ultra wide.
An ultra wide, which isn't great for streaming to YouTube. So
no.
But there's a deployment for Tigera stuff that's having a few failures in it. But let's just, because it's upsetting me. Yep. That's really hard to read, but you know that you get the idea.
That's what it should look like.
The verbose gives you an awful lot of information. It means that you can use the open source tooling without having to pay for the platform if you don't need to. Maybe you're a consultant, and a consultant or a freelancer who touches or assesses Kubernetes clusters, multiple Kubernetes clusters a day or a week or a month. This sort of tooling runs locally on your machine, and it gives you a good picture as to what the security posture state is of any cluster that you're looking at. So
and I like that it has links to their documentation as well, so you can just control click it and it will take you straight there as well, which is nice.
So it is very, very good. So what we're going to do is I'm going to clear my screen because we're going to jump across to we'll make that bigger again. We're going to jump across to the Armo portal, where they have a platform version of this, a cloud-based version, which looks at basically. I'll show you. It gives you a Helm command to install pods and deployments and stuff inside your cluster, so that it feeds data back to the cloud-based platform for you to look at. Okay, so let's just jump across to that now. Okay, so let's talk pricing first. So the pricing for like community pricing, that's what I'm using at the minute for up to 10 worker nodes. If you want the cloud-based functionality, it's nothing. Data retention is 1 month, and then you still get some support in product chat and email as well. So that's really good. A lot of companies don't give much in the way of support for the free tier, but ArmoSec are there. Then you have the team plan at $29 per worker node per month. So if you're getting if you've got some big clusters or some big organizations and big users of Kubernetes clusters, then this is perhaps the one for you. You're retaining your data for 3 months, and you have what they're deeming silver support, and you're getting an annual audit there as well. With the enterprise grade stuff, we know I like to talk about Kubernetes adoption in the enterprise, given the customers that I work with, but the enterprise version is tailored, so it depends on what you need it for and what you're using. Speak to ArmoSec about the pricing there. So you're retaining data for 6 months. You've got your gold and platinum support, and you can do on-premises and cloud-based Kubernetes here as well, which is fantastic. And then if you wanted to view all features, which I'm not going to do here, you can. So let's jump across to the Armo platform, so cloud.armosec.io. So again, you can just add a cluster, which I've already clicked, and it gives you the Helm commands to run on your cluster. So again, before you run anything, just copying and pasting a command off the internet, just make sure that you know what it's doing. But in this case, we're just going to run, and then we'll have a look at what it's done. So it's installing a Helm release on my cluster because it doesn't exist. So if we go in my cluster to have a quick look at what it's done, so kubectl get NS for namespaces, you can see that it's added a Kubescape namespace. And if we have a look at what Helm releases it's added to that namespace, if I can spell.
Oh, you've got an extra dash in there as well.
Okay, thank you. You can see there's a Helm release called Kubescape that's being deployed to the namespace called Kubescape as well. And you can see details on the chart and the status and stuff as well. So if we have a look at the pods for that namespace, you can see that they're all in a really good position. So they container created, pulled in whatever they needed, and started running within less than 50 seconds, as you can see on the screen there, which is fantastic. Nice. So their claim here is that within 3 minutes, they'll be able to see the data in the portal. So let's just see. Again, it says waiting for cluster, but what I found is in my testing, the website lags behind a little bit. So if what we want to do is just force that to refresh, and you can see that my cluster called Cloud Native Weekly, which you can see, the name is right here.
Yep.
My cluster called Cloud Native Weekly is showing in the portal. So you can see the compliance. Let's have a click into that. You can see, just like we saw on the open source version of this tooling, it's all built on the same tooling as I was using just a second ago. 73% of all controls are passing, 77% on MITRE, 69% on NSA, which is fantastic. And then you can see, easier to read, obviously, on a web page, but you can see the same information that we saw in the shell or in the console shown here. So you can see what's failed in terms of the control name, how many failed and how many are ignored. And then you have the link off to the documentation of that particular issue. So you can see a description of the issue, what does this control test, and then how to remediate that issue. Okay. So it's really, really useful. Again, if you're a consultant or maybe you're doing a long-term engagement or setting up that Kubernetes capability within an enterprise or within any size of business, really, so a pane of glass like ArmoSec's platform based on Kubescape or powered by Kubescape is a fantastic resource to be able to use, to be able to have a look at your security posture within the cluster, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then one thing I like on here is the RBAC visualizer. I don't know if you're going to go into that, but I really like this tool, and it wasn't there from the beginning when I first tested with it, because RBAC inside Kubernetes is hard because it's all YAML files or configured through a different IAM provider. But here you can actually see each one, which is really nice. You can see this account's connected to that.
I need the chat to go away.
Yeah, you can just see your cluster admin has this permissions, and then your system Kubernetes, I think, whatever that says, has other permissions. So it's really nice to see who can do what and that without using the command line.
Yeah, it's perfect. And as I say, the Kubescape and the Armo platform based on Kubescape can do it. We've just been showing cluster scanning here, but it can do repository scanning. It can do YAML scanning. It can do all sorts of CI/CD scanning as well. So it can do all of that. So it's not just we'll scan the live clusters. It can scan your infrastructure as code. It can scan all of your intent and your YAML and all of that sort of stuff, and give you the same sort of report configuration. You can see in terms of vulnerabilities, we've got we've got 293 vulnerabilities in my cluster. 130 are fixable and 9 RCE. So so there's a bit of work to do on my cluster, which means because it's a test cluster, it's probably getting deleted in exactly 5 minutes. But really
one other good thing I want to say about Kubescape is if you're writing your YAML, you can actually have an extension in your VS Code from Kubescape, which will actually check it live before you even commit it to source control and your GitOps. So you can use it the whole length of your journey in Cloud Native, not just once you've got everything deployed, which is really cool.
And that's just another advertisement for using VS Code, right?
Yes.
I live in VS Code most days. A fantastic product. So that's, again, get Kubescape downloaded as your extension, get it configured if you're doing Kubernetes. Again, as a consultant, it's an invaluable tooling that can make you better at your job, save you time, and allow you to have more impact.
Least admin effort.
That's it.
That's what it's all about. Yeah.
So that was probably our slightly more than 10 minutes of tech this week, but I think it was worth breaking the rules a little bit for.
Yeah, definitely. And Wesley wasn't here either, so we had some extra time to fill.
We forgot about Wesley. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, Wesley, if you're watching. I don't know, but Wesley's at Azure Lowlands in the Netherlands. It's a big IT conference. He's there with work. They've got a little booth, giving out copies of our book and allowing people to win a year's subscription of ChatGPT, which is really cool. So if you're at Azure Lowlands, go see him. Or if you are there, leave a comment when you watch this on repeat.
I think if he's giving out signed copies of your book, I would like to complain because I haven't got a signed copy of your book yet.
One day, when we finally get to meet him.
One day.
Yeah. Maybe at KubeCon if you come.
Yeah, maybe. Well, if my wife is watching, let's talk about Chicago in November.
November, right? Yeah. So, fingers crossed. Well, I got my new book, so
yeah, all good. So I mean, KubeCon twice a year for you these days, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm aiming for. So hopefully we can stick like that. Yeah,
sounds good. So anything to add before we wrap up? And
nothing else to say in this week. I'm looking forward to next week. Hopefully we will figure out what it's going to be about shortly. We haven't yet.
We already know what next week is going to be about.
We do. Yes,
it's going to be about Dapper. It's MVP renewal day. It's also going to be about Dapper. We have Diagrid staff member Mark Juker. Sorry, Mark, I'm butchering your name. Juker is joining us to do the 10-minute tech segment next week. So that will be all about Dapper and how awesome Lego for Cloud Native or Dapper is.
Yep. Awesome. Right. So I guess with that then, we should now say goodbye and see you all next week.
Thanks for joining. Have a good week.
Cheers. Bye.